My mission, climbing Spain's highest mountain, Mount Teide, with 3,718 meters and located in Tenerife. But simply climbing it would be too easy. So I will make a whole island crossing. I will start in a town called Puerto de la Cruz, where I head up to Teide, sleep a night there, cross the island and head down on the other side to the sea level. In total, more than 5,500 elevation and more than 100 kilometers total distance. I'm George and this is the channel Untraveled Roads. I set a goal and a challenge to myself to climb the highest peaks of every European country. And I invite you to join me on this mission. I actually wanted to summit Mount Teide a few weeks ago, but the weather didn't allow me. What it allowed me was to make a test tour and to test my equipment and my packing list. In today's video, I want to share exactly this with you, share the learnings from the test tour and share my final packing list with you. Have fun with this video. So I will start with everything that I took to the scouting mission. Afterwards I'll talk a bit about the learnings and what I will change for the actual summit to Teide. As a backpack I have from Fjällraven the Abisko's Friluft with 45 liters. Right side attached hiking poles, I will speak about that later. One ESO pad, I also come to that later, and the sleeping bag. Inside here I have one extra pack where at the moment is my rain clothes, but in real life here is actually all the camera equipment which I currently don't have because I film with it. On the sides I have two small bags. I have first of all my lamp, which is from Pelzel, the RGB. The cool feature of this is it has a red light. I personally in the night always use the red light, simply for the reason I try to keep my visibility low and also try to not make any light pollution for animals or birds. On the other side of the back I have a couple of small equipment like a fire steel and a small neck knife just to cut smaller things and also to use the fire steel. For the fire steel I have just a 5-use fire steel that works. Starting with the top compartment, I have a first aid kit with me. The first aid kit is completely assembled by myself. I put in what I think works best and left out what I think doesn't work. Starting with the main part, I have a lot of bandages, different sizes, different types. Of course some blister bandages, hand gloves and a lot of disinfection. Additionally one scissor and also one tick remover thingy. And more bandages, different kinds. I have some medicine like painkillers and also these tablets. They are basically for disinfection of water or for sterilization of water. If a water is contaminated, you use some of the pills and you basically can decontaminate it. As I said, additional painkillers. I also have some tampons. They are not for me. They are either as fire starter or also can use as bandages. I also have one Israeli bandage, especially if I have strong bleeding and I'm alone, I can patch up myself quite easily. And for people who sleep outdoors, very important, a rescue cover. With this you can, especially if your sleeping bag is broken or is wet or whatever reason you cannot use it, it gives a lot of extra warmth and you can survive a night with it. One side is gold, the other one is silver, one is for warming, the other one is for cooling the body. What I really love about this backpack is not only that it has this front bag where I can store some additional stuff like camera and access it quite quickly, but also it's a front loader, so especially if I make camp, I don't need to search from the bottom everything. I can just open the completely side front like this and access basically stuff easily. Inside of the backpack I always keep a separation and also a sort of an order with dry bags, so I know based on the color what is what, and also in case the backpack gets wet, the stuff inside is more or less protected. Food supply and cooking. This is from Optimus, the Crux Lite gas cooker and pot, everything included. Basically I use just a regular gas cartouche and it has included this pot that fits on the gas cooker. It has a very minimalistic stove. You can just screw it on top of the gas cartouche and with this thing you can regulate how much gas comes out. Usually you just turn it up completely and with the fire steel I make them fire. Additionally, there's a wind protection, which is very good if it's like windy, like in the last Teide tour. Very minimalistic. Usually I use actually not gas cookers, I try to use hobo cookers, but if you follow my channel you know that I have some issues with my knife, so I cannot use the hobo cooker because I need the knife for making little firewood. For the gas cooker we of course need some stuff to cook, so let's come to the food, and something I cannot not take with me, which is coffee. I on every hike take always some simple filter coffee with me and some milk powder and a very small coffee machine. I don't use the typical Italian coffee machine. What I use is from Vacao, the Picca Mocca or Mocca Picchi or Picchi Mocchi something. How this works is basically you have in the inside a filter, and in this filter you of course put the coffee, and eventually you fill this one up with water, drop the coffee, and then what you do is you turn it very long. And eventually, if you completely turn it off, you can lift it down and hopefully don't drop it. And then because of the gravity and because of the pressure, the water runs through the filter and you have fresh coffee there. And then I usually take some milk powder and make a perfect nice coffee for the road and also for the morning. Something I cannot take with me, simply maybe I'm a bit addicted, but I need a coffee in the morning. Very important is of course the food that I take with me. This bag is full with all the food. It's actually packed already for the actual tour. So let's look what's on the menu. I try always to pack it in additional bags simply because then it's easier to sort, and also I try to count the calories per day. On a typical day like Friday, where I have only one warm meal in the evening, I basically have as dinner some dried fruit, in this case from Tactical Food Pack. Fish curry, obviously it depends on the hike, but this is already packed. And then additional some dessert, because usually one food pack like this has 500 calories, which is a bit too less if I exercise the whole day and also if I don't have a big lunch. Additionally, I try to get some extra calories during the day with some energy gels and bars. One of these energy gels has, I think, around almost 200 calories. So during the day I can just nibble them or lick on them. It's really disgusting, but it brings a good amount of calories. Additionally, also some energy bars. I think this energy bar here has also something like, yeah, it has 392 calories, so it's a good booster, and then I don't need to make lunch and can save some time. Looking at a different day where I also have lunch is, for example, on Sunday, where I have a full lunch. I try to iterate simply to make sure I have enough calories. In the morning I have some muesli with around 500 calories, and then during the day I have some tortillas and some tuna again. That gives me enough calories and carbs during the day. And additional for the afternoon I have another energy gel with 190 calories and an energy bar, I think, with 110 calories. That was the category food. Obviously it's more or less for every hike the same, but depending what I get in the supermarket and what I get in the shops. Fitting to food, we also need the next category, which is water supply. For the water supply, especially in the evening and the morning, I have 3 bottles with me, in total 2.750 milliliters. I have 2 1-liter bottles from Platypus. They're very nice because I can basically wrap them like this in a very small size if they are empty, and they have a very beautiful picture of I don't know what this is, a fox or something like this, so it's very nice. Additionally to this, I also have one other bottle with 750 milliliters. I also in the night fill this up with warm water and use this between my legs for warming up a bit and use this as a water bottle. There are not many springs on Mount Teide, so I basically need to take most of the water supply during the day with me, and then also for the evening, for the camp, either for morning or for evening. During the day I have a water bubble which has 3 liters, which basically is the consumption for the whole day. This leaves us now with 2 more categories. One is the sleeping setup and one is clothes, and fitting to the clothes also the rain cover, of course. Let's start and look into the sleeping setup, where I think I got most of the learnings and most of the adaptations to the actual tour. As a Bivy, I used from outdoor research the Helium Bivy, which is ultra light and also has a very small package size. As a sleeping pad, I used from Tenerife the Neo Air Uberlight, which is I think the smallest and lightest sleeping pad on the market. As a sleeping bag, I used from Carinthia the XP Top, which I think has a comfort limit at around 0 degrees or +1 degree and the extreme limit from -14. Before we look into the closest and the sleeping setup, let's speak a bit about the conditions I expect on the island crossing and on the summit to Teide and my experience that I got during the test tour. Firstly, during the test tour, there was Kalima, so basically sandstorm from the Sahara, which made up to 2000 meters it really chill, so it was more cold than it should have been. During the night it was up to -9 degrees, and the next day it was a very strong wind, up to 50 km/h. During my actual tour, I expect to have 3 to 4 nights. The first night will be on a height of around 2000 meters in a pine forest, where I think I'm pretty good protected. I'm not worried about this at all. The second night will be on 3200 to 3500, so basically quite close to the summit or to the top of Teide. And there I expect to have conditions of -12 degrees plus very strong winds, because there's no forest, there's no really protection, and generally the wind tends to be very strong on Teide. Lastly, the last night will be on the plateau, which is around 2400 to 2500 meters. There I also expect it quite chill, because the wind goes pretty strong through the plateau, and I expect conditions similar to the Teide test tour or the scouting mission. We're at -9, so I guess it will be quite similar. That's the plan. And yeah, let's look further in my equipment. This is where the difficulties of traveling around and climbing mountain begins, because I have very limited capacity of stuff I can take with me on the travels. And usually I don't climb 4000 meter high mountains, so my equipment is orientated on warmer temperatures. For example, my Tenerife Neo Air Uberlight sleeping pad has a comfort maximum, a general maximum from I think around 0 degrees, and Teide will get way lower than that. To compensate this, I bought an additional sleeping pad that I put under the Neo Air to have some additional insulation or protection from the cold ground from the bottom. This should help. This is my sleeping bag. It's the XP Top, which has a comfort limit of 5 degrees. Obviously on Teide I will go way below that. Comfort limit basically says that's the limit of where you sleep comfortable. Usually I try to add 5 degrees on the comfort limit, because otherwise it's still very chill. The extreme limit, which says you can use this sleeping bag without getting hypothermia, but this sleeping bag is -14. So what I felt during the Teide Scouting Mission, that it was really cold inside there. I used the one water bottle with hot water that gave me some sort of warmth. Put the bottle between the legs to simply warm up my body. It helped a lot and also warmed up the sleeping bag from the inside, but it was definitely not enough. From the outside I could tell that the whole sleeping bag was frozen, but in the inside it still protected me. So definitely a top sleeping bag, but it was at the limit of it, and I didn't sleep very good. I found some solution for this, but before I show you the solutions that I have, let's talk about the rest of the sleeping setup. This is how it looks like. Generally the Helium Bivy is really comfortable to sleep in, especially because it has this pole, so if you are inside, the mesh is not directly in your face. My biggest learning is to not use this Bivy in alpine environment. It's definitely not made for it. I had the same issue or similar issues on the Pico Ruivo, and I think it has its limits, and the limits are definitely alpine environment. The condensation is a big problem. Learning, I will not take this Bivy with me on the island crossing. And I'm really happy I made this scouting mission, because this one night was terrible to sleep in, and if I can avoid it, then I will avoid it and will use something else. So let's recap the problems that I had during the night. First of all, the sleeping bag is simply too cold. The extreme limit is -14 degrees, and on Teide I had conditions to -6, and I expect, if I make the whole island crossing and I sleep higher, to have -9 to -10. To compensate this, I don't have much of a possibility, because I cannot just buy a new sleeping bag, because I don't have the money and also don't have the capacity to carry it around, so I need to stick with the XP Top. In order to compensate this, I have bought an inlet. It's from Life Venture, a cotton liner. This inlet you place basically inside of the sleeping bag, and it should bump up 2 to 3 degrees more of the extreme limit, give me additional protection. Additionally, I don't know if this will work, I never tried it before, but since this worked very well with this water bottle that I put hot water inside and basically heated up the sleeping bag, I thought to try to find a more sustainable solution, and I found from Decathlon actually warming pads. These warming pads, I will put some into the socks to warm my feet where I felt most cold, and I will put one between the legs where one of the biggest veins of the body run along, and there I want to place one to warm up. How this works is you open them, and with the contact of the air it should heat up. I tried it at home test-wise and never tried it yet in the sleeping bag, so this is something to experiment with. If it works, let's see. It definitely will give me a better night if I have some additional temperature increase. This holds, I think, 6 hours and provides around 45 degrees, so it should be perfect if it works. If not, I should be able to survive simply with the cotton liner. The other problem that I had was that the sleeping pad, the thermarest, is super light, that's great, but the R value is not high enough, or actually not low enough, and it has a limit of 0 degrees, which I definitely reached, respectively I went way lower than that. So what I decided to do is I used from Expert the Cinmat Ultralight, my favorite sleeping pad. It's definitely heavier, especially because I have the long white edition. I think this has a better protection for me for the cold from downside, and I don't need to take the additional insulation mat. So I simply will take the Cinmat. Lastly, to compensate the problems I had with the condensation, I will switch the sleeping setup completely, and instead of the Helium Bivy, I will take from Carinthia the Microtent Plus. This Bivy, or actually a tent, it's a mix between a Bivy and a tent, has 3 layers of Gore-Tex. This gives me the following improvements. First of all, the layers of Gore-Tex will allow me to breathe inside even if it's completely closed, because one of the big advantages that the oxygen and the condensation that my body and my breath produces can easily go out. And the other improvement is that these Gore-Tex layers also keep the wind out. So inside, I used it in Fuerteventura, for example, during very, very stormy conditions. I didn't feel much inside of the wind. The only thing I felt was like the mesh shaking. But this should help me a lot, especially if it's windy. That's my setup, and I hope it works. Let me show you how it looks like if we pack it up. And this is how my night setup will look like. I, as I said, used the Microtent Plus from Carinthia, and this Microtent is a mix or a hybrid between an actual tent and a Bivy bag. It has basically the poles in front of one side, and on the other side keeping the mesh out of the face and giving also enough capacity or space to put, for example, the backpack or some additional equipment inside. The Microtent, and that's one thing that I really love about it, if you follow me, I usually try to sleep as close to the sky as possible, so I try to be not in a tent or in a Bivy bag that is fully closed. What you can do with the Microtent is, instead of closing the whole Gore-Tex layer, you can just use partial or completely mosquito mesh that you can put over the face and over the body and completely close it. And with this, yeah, you're closer to the stars. It's a bit less claustrophobic. Obviously for the Teide tour, simply because of the temperature, I will close it completely. You have inside like complete space to breathe, and you don't have the mesh directly on your body. And if you have some hiking poles, this is my preferred way of sleeping. You close the mesh only half, and then you use the hiking poles to basically build this pre-tent. I have enough oxygen to come in. I don't feel so claustrophobic. I am also still wind protected, because usually you have to put on the back side where it's completely closed to the wind. I think with this sleeping setup, I definitely will have a higher sleeping quality and a better protection. And I really hope that this hand warmers inside of the sleeping bag that warming for 6 to 8 hours should definitely help something. Let's see how it will be, of course, during the tour, and after the tour I will update you. One last thing, why did I not choose the setup from the beginning? Simply because this Microtent is great and works really perfectly, but it's very heavy. It's almost 2 kilos. Also the sleeping pad, especially because it's a long wide edition, is I think a bit more than 1 kilo. And of course the sleeping bag together with the cotton liner is also another heavy equipment. So my original idea was to reduce weight as much as possible to allow me to make a bigger distance and to move faster. After the category of the sleeping setup, where I had most of the changes, let's come to the next category, which is clothes. For the clothes, start with the absolute base layer, which is socks, underwear and t-shirt, of course. The t-shirt and the underwear are from a Swiss company called X-Bionic, and this is the Combat Energizer 4. It's supposed to regulate the body temperature. As I first bought it, I thought it doesn't work and it's just a marketing gag, but I'm not sure exactly which kind of dark voodoo magic is behind that, but somehow it really helps regulating the temperature. Of course not on the temperature accurate, but sometimes if it's hot you feel that it cools, and sometimes if it's cold you feel that it warms up. How this is supposed to work is somehow they build in the clothes some air channels, and with this air channel and sweat absorption it's supposed to regulate the body temperature. And as I said, it actually surprisingly works really well. The socks are from the company Right Socks. I always got blisters, as almost everybody who is hiking, but as I found this company and started to use these socks, I completely stopped. I since then had one time a blister, but never again. How these socks work, they have basically two layers. One is very close to the feet and one outer layer which is then giving the protection, and with this protection you don't get blisters. It's crazy expensive, and of course they don't hold so long, they are socks, but it's definitely worth it. Let's jump to the next layer. Next layer is the insulation layer, which I will mainly use in the camp, but also if it gets very cold during the day to give me some extra protection. Basically a long thermal underwear which keeps the body temperature regulated. On top I have one insulation garment from Carinthia, which is the Ultra shirt. It's basically a very lightweight but very thick garment. Top I have a UV protection simply because my skin is very sensitive, and if I'm too long in the sun I turn red like a crab, and this is just a very thin jacket that protects me from the sun. As a trouser I have from Fjällraven the Cap 2, which is one of my most favorite trousers. It's simply super versatile, light, and you cannot break it. You have the lighter mesh everywhere where the body needs to breathe. Let's jump to the next layer, which is basically some additional protection. Next layer, of course, shoes. It's from Hikes, the Black Eagle Athletics. It's very lightweight shoes that have also a complete water protection. It's made out of Gore-Tex material. They are very great with hot temperatures, especially if you're like in desert or something like this and the ground is really hot. It gives you some additional protection. Also really nice, that's the best thing about these shoes, is the fast zipper. Instead of tying them, you have this fast zipper here where you just pull down the plastic and it basically closes the shoes like this. Additional to it, I have a Shimak. It's one of my favorite and most versatile clothes that you can have. It's basically, the idea behind is that you have a scarf, but you can also use it to protect the whole face or the whole head, depending how you knot it. There are different techniques. And also if you're in the camp and you need to touch the pot or something like this, it's hot, then you just want to take the Shimak and grab it. Next we have a bit of an insulation garment. It's from Carinthia, the Ultra Vest. It's a very thick vest that keeps the body warm, and I never really liked vests, but lately I started to use them more, especially if it's not that cold and you don't want to have anything on the arms, but you still feel a bit fresh on the corp of your body. This jacket is like very light and you can fold it in a really small size, so it's perfect for being on the road. Next we have additional insulation garment, which is from Claw Gear, the MK2 fleece jackets. It's actually military supply. I really love this fleece jacket, but I generally love fleece because it feels like very comfortable and very fluffy. It also has a small hood, so if it's like cold doing breaks or something, you can also put this on top. So next is the teddy bear. It's from Revolution Waste, the Sherpa hoodie. It's a really comfortable, really thick pullover slash jacket. It basically has some wind protection, but not too much, but it keeps like incredible warm. It's incredibly fluffy and it just gives you the feeling of a nice pyjama. During the Teide Scouting, especially in the second day, I used this as outer layer, basically instead of a jacket. It gave me enough protection, and with the Carinthia Ultra Vest under it, it gave me enough wind protection because my core was protected, and on the arms it was not a big problem. Last layer is from Carinthia, the ESG jacket. It's a really thick, really warm jacket that has marked to -10 degrees. I used it actually only in the camp and one time on top of the mountain as I made a break. And some extra clothes which I take as a reserve with me. Of course, extra socks in case the other socks are wet, I have something to change. They are also from White Socks, a bit lighter ones. And I have an extra pair t-shirt. It's from Merino and More, a merino t-shirt. And because of my experience from last time, I bought some thermo socks, which I basically will use during the night. They are quite light and really thick, so I hope to warm up my feet during the night. And basically, as I showed you before, the warming pads, my plan is to put one of the warming pads in each of the sock, and that should give me some protection. And I hope with this, my feet will be this time not too cold. Lastly, my hiking sticks. They are from Steinwood, and probably if you follow me since longer, you know that I always use them. I'm super happy with them. They are aluminium, so they are a bit more heavy because they are not of carbon, but also a bit more robust. There's one other thing that I completely forgot. I have so many clothes, and even last time with the backpack it got too full, so it was like really difficult to pack everything. And for this I have during my travels two backpacks with me, one with 45 liters and one with 70 liters. The idea behind this, if I make a longer tour, then of course take the bigger one, which is from Osprey, the Archeon with 70 liters. That was all the learnings and all the equipment I'm gonna take with me on the island crossing on the summit to Teide. I didn't want to just make a loadout and a tutorial, but I wanted to involve you in my thinking process, tell you the challenges that I have and how I try to compensate them. I really hope this is beneficial for you, and if you liked it, as always, give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. This makes projects like this possible. I'm here already in the meantime in La Gomera on the next Canary Island, basically making some adventures here. After that I will head back to Tenerife to finally do my island crossing. See you next week for a new adventure. Ciao, ciao.